Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. And today we finally start World War II. I know maybe a little bit later than usual, but we're starting World War II today. So happy days. Let's get into it because there's a lot to cover in just this section, just this lecture. So today's technically three title notes. If you think about your title page in your notebooks, World War II, just title it World War II. So Unit 7 title page, World War II. And then the chapter 12, 5 sections of it, World War II and the Holocaust. There's one section just about the Holocaust, so we're going to cover that as well. Chapter 12. And what we're talking about today, World War II begins. Chapter 12, Lesson 1. All right, let's get into it. That was your warm-up. Love me some maps. Okay, objectives. We're going to describe Hitler's actions before the war and identify the relationship between geography and Japan's seizure of Manchuria and North Korea. All right, so you'll notice that this slide is like a third, a fourth of it in blue. So other slides, you'll see me have it in white. Again, just so the gray bounces off the blue, kind of ugly. But there are things written in red, so you just need to still write down what's in red, okay? So German moves towards war. So World War II begins with the ideas of Adolf Hitler. He believed that Germans belonged to a so-called Aryan race that was superior to all other races and nationalities. Consequently, Hitler believed that Germany was capable of building a great civilization. To be a great power, he thought that Germany needed more land to support a larger population. Remember, Lebensraum. Already in the 1920s, Hitler had indicated that a Nazi regime would find this land to the east, the Soviet Union, USSR. Germany, he said, must then prepare for war with the Soviet Union. And after the Soviet Union had been conquered, its land would be settled by German peasants. The Slavic peoples would be used as slave labor to build an Aryan racial state that Hitler thought would be dominating for 1,000 years. This is all ideological, of course. It's not necessarily truth. So here you have this is Germany after all it's taking over. See it's white on here, and then it's also red. I know it doesn't look that great, and I didn't want to change it to just white, so deal with it. Okay. All right, treaty violator. So after World War I, the Treaty of Versailles limited Germany's military powers. Chancellor Hitler, posing as a man of peace, stressed that Germany wished to revise the unfair provisions of a treaty by peaceful manners. Germany, he said, only wanted its rightful place among the European states. Remember, it used to be number one industrially speaking, Otto von Bismarck, 1890. March 9th, 1935, Hitler announced the creation of a new air force. Now, remember, this is in clear violation of the Treaty of Versailles. They could not build up their armed forces. 1 week later, he began a military draft that would expand Germany's army from 100,000 troops to 550,000 troops. These steps, again, were in direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. France, Great Britain, and Italy condemned Germany's actions and warned against future aggressive steps. In the midst of the Great Depression, distracted by internal problems with the terrors of World War I still fresh in their memories, these nations did nothing further. So Hitler was convinced that the Western states had no intention of using force to maintain the Treaty of Versailles. Poke the bear, and if the bear doesn't respond, well, there you go. March 7, 1936, he sent German troops into the Rhineland. The Rhineland was a part of Germany, but according to the Treaty of Versailles, it was a demilitarized area, which meant Germany was not allowed to have weapons or fortifications there. That should be or, not of. Let's just change it now. Wait. Can I not change it? Is it not going to escape? It's not going to escape. I'm sorry, people. So France had, according to the Treaty of Versailles, had the right to use force. against any violation of this provision, but it would not act without British support. Air Force. The Luftwaffe. Sorry for the pixelated picture, but that is Hitler in the Rhineland. Here you have the Rhineland, Germany, and then the Rhineland. It's this buffer state between France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Germany. Appeasement. Test question, by the way. Great Britain did not support the use of force against Germany. The British government viewed the occupation of German territory by German troops as a reasonable action by a dissatisfied power. The London Times noted that the Germans were only going into their own back garden. So Britain began this policy of practice called appeasement. This policy was based on the belief that if European states satisfied the reasonable demands of dissatisfied powers, the dissatisfied powers would be content, stability and peace would be achieved in Europe. And all that is to say is giving in to keep the peace. You give up land to just keep peace and stability in Europe. So here you have the stepping stones to glory, the spineless leaders of democracy, and Hitler is goose-stepping his way to victory. So you see rearmament, what does that say? Rhineland occupation. Next is Danzig. And then it says, I think that says rest of the universe. BFF. So meanwhile, Hitler gained new allies. Benito Mussolini of Italy had long dreamed of creating a new Roman Empire. We talked about this before, last unit. October 1935, Mussolini's forces invaded Ethiopia. If you recall, before World War I, Italy tried to invade Ethiopia and they failed. So Ethiopia had been long on the minds of Italians trying to take it over. Angered by French and British opposition to his invasion, Mussolini welcomed Hitler's support and we become closer allies. 1936, both Germany and Italy sent troops to Spain to help General Francisco Franco in the Spanish Civil War, but we already know that. October 1936, Mussolini and Hitler made an agreement recognizing their common interests. 1 month later, Mussolini spoke of this new alliance between Italy and Germany, called it the Rome-Berlin Axis. Also in November, Germany and Japan signed the Anti-Comintern Pact, promising a common front against communism. Comintern, Soviet Union. So this is a map of Ethiopia. Defend Ethiopia against Italian fascism. And this is Haile Selassie. He will escape. He's the leader of Ethiopia. He will escape and go to the League of Nations, asking them to condemn what Italy has done to his country. And do you think they supported him? No, they didn't. So this is this new Roman Empire that he was going to rebuild. The stuff in red is what they already controlled, Italy. So purple is what he wanted to build. There's Mussolini and Hitler. Mussolini and Hitler. BFFs. This is picture Italians. Or no, Spanish Civil War. Spanish Civil War. This is them sending aid to Spain. And here you have the Anti-Comintern Pact, Japanese and Nazi officials. Presenting a symphony of artists assembled, Anti-Comintern Blast. Presenting a symphony of artists assembled in the 12 great capitals of this world. Anschluss. So by 1937, Germany was once a world power, as Hitler proclaimed. He was convinced that neither France nor Great Britain would provide much opposition to his plans. In 1938, he decided to pursue one of his goals, Anschluss, or the union with Austria, to his native land. Hitler forced the Austrian chancellor to put Austrian Nazis in charge of the government. Now, remember, Germany and Austria had long been, friendly allies with each other. I mean, World War I, hello. They also speak German there. So, or a dialect of German that is similar to what is spoken in Germany. The new government promptly invited these German troops to enter Austria and to, quote, help in maintaining law and order. One day later, March 13th, 1938, after his triumphal return to his native land, Hitler annexed, why does that say Germany? Can I escape from this, please? It won't let me escape. I'm sorry. It won't. My keyboard's not working. It should be annexed. He did not annex Germany. He is Germany. He annexed Austria. Oh, there's Hitler in Austria. There's Austria. Austria, Rhineland, already taken. Gullible. So sorry, the red with the blue does not look good, but it is what it is. Hitler's next objective was the destruction of Czechoslovakia. On September 15, 1938, he demanded that all Germany be given the Sudetenland, an area of northwest Czechoslovakia that was inhabited largely by Germans. He was willing to risk world war to achieve his objective. Hastily arranged conference in Munich, British, French, German, and Italian representatives did not object to Hitler's plans, but instead reached an agreement that virtually met all of his demands. German troops were allowed to occupy the Sudetenland as the Czechs were abandoned by the Western Allies, and they stood by helplessly. The Munich conference test question was the high point of Western appeasement of Hitler. When Neville Chamberlain, Britain's prime minister, returned to England from Munich, he boasted that the agreement meant peace in our time. One British statesman, Winston Churchill, warned instead that the settlement at Munich was a disaster of the first magnitude. Hitler promised Chamberlain that he promised, guys, he pinky promised that he would make no more demands, and like many others, Chamberlain believed Hitler's promises. That's why he's gullible. So now you have the Rhineland, you have Austria, and now this stuff is the Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia. Here's more territory annexed by Germany, usually referred to as the Sudetenland. Boom, 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 boom. And then you have Prague is the capital of the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia. And then the yellow is Czechoslovakia's border. There's Mussolini and Hitler, BFFs, Neville Chamberlain, and this is the France guy. That Edouard Daladier. Here you have Hitler shaking hands with Neville Chamberlain. Look, they're smiling. And he's like, he returned home to Britain. He's like, I have Hitler's promise. He's not going to take over any more land. Oh, what a joke. Again, look at, I don't know if this is doctored, but again, Hitler, Neville Chamberlain, friends. All right, red flag. In fact, Hitler was more convinced than ever that Western democracies would not fight, and he was sure he could not make a mistake and was dissatisfied with what occurred at Munich. So in March 1939, Hitler, because, the Sudetenland, this is not all of Czechoslovakia. This is just a little piece. This is just a little piece of land, little piece. So March 1939, Hitler invaded and took control of Bohemia and Moravia in western Czechoslovakia. In the eastern part of the country, Slovakia became a puppet state by Nazi Germany. On the evening, March 15, 1939, Hitler triumphantly declared in Prague that he would be known as the greatest German of them all. Wow. He's not even German. At last, Western states reacted to this Nazi threat. Hitler's aggressions had been made clear by his promises were worthless. When Hitler began to demand the Polish port of Danzig, Great Britain saw the danger and offered to protect Poland in the event of war. At the same time, both France and Britain realized that only the Soviet Union was powerful enough to help contain Nazi aggression. They began political and military negotiations with Joseph Stalin, the Soviet dictator, but these failed. The United States, still suffering the effects of the Great Depression, continued on a path of non-intervention. Congress passed a series of new laws stating the terms of neutrality to prevent the entry of the United States in any foreign wars. These are known as Neutrality Acts. These laws also reflected American isolationist feelings. These feelings were so strong that Congress held investigations into possible harmful business interests that had led the country to enter World War I. So again, here's Sudetenland in gray, Bohemia, Moravia, Slovakia, and then all this gets given to Hungary. There you go. Here's Danzig, Germany, the Polish corridor that was created. after the Treaty of Versailles. And yeah, neutrality. I can't see a thing, mates. We must be perfectly safe. America. There's FDR, our president at the time. War. So, meanwhile, Hitler continued to believe that the West would not fight over Poland. He now feared that the West and the Soviet Union might make an alliance. So, such an alliance would make a two-front war for Germany, World War I. Knock, knock. So, to prevent this, Hitler made his own agreement with Stalin. August 23rd, 1939. Hitler and the Soviet Union signed the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. In it, these two nations promised not to attack one another. And to get the Non-Aggression Pact, Hitler often offered Stalin the eastern part of Poland and the Baltic states because he expected to fight the Soviet Union anyway. Wow, he crossed his fingers. It didn't matter to Hitler what he had promised anyone. He was accustomed to breaking promises. Hitler shocked the world when he announced this treaty. Hitler was now free to attack Poland. So 8 days later, September 1st, 1931, German forces invaded Western Poland. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain admitted that Britain's previous policies of appeasement had to be amended. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany. Da, 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 da. But we're not done yet. Look at this. Hitler stabbing, forgive me, comrade, but it seems such a good opportunity. Russo-German pact. This is Stalin getting stabbed in the back by Hitler. Again, these two don't trust each other. They're standing over Poland, shaking their hand, holding guns behind their backs. Here's the marriage. Wonder how long this honeymoon will last. Stalin, the wife. Hitler, the husband. Yes, dear. Of course, dear. Not a problem. Here's some goose-stepping people, German troops. All right, now we're going to talk about Japan. We kind of alluded to it in our last lecture with talking about the chaos in China. So now we mentioned parts of Japan in that lecture. So here is that tie. So Japan had already already in imperial power, had colonized Korea in 1910 before World War I. Undertook a plan of control of all of Manchuria in 1931. On the night of September 18th, 1931, Japanese soldiers disguised as Chinese soldiers blew up a small section of the Manchurian Railway near Mukden. Japan owned this area, and the Japanese soldiers wanted to blame the Mukden incident on the Chinese. The Japanese army used this incident to justify taking all of Manchuria in a series of rapid military advances. Manchuria offered many resources that the Japanese needed. After the conquest, the Japanese army became committed to an expansionist policy, a policy of enlarging the Japanese empire. By 1932, I think this is by the summer of 1932, the Japanese army had formed Manchuria into a separate state and renamed it Manchukuo. This placed a puppet state, a puppet ruler, Henry Puyi, on the throne. He had been China's last emperor since an infant. He abdicated that throne following the revolution in 1911 in China. So again, you can assume that this is Mukden right here. You can assume that World War II, if you think about it, world global scale, this aggression happening before the war, some contemporary historians want to readjust when World War II actually started. But I mean, if you really want to call it that, I mean, September 1st, 1939 is, of course, the starting date official. But some historians could claim that, when Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931 was the beginning of it all. Here's a picture from that invasion, Mukden incident. More moves. Worldwide protests against the Japanese seizure of Manchuria led to the League of Nations to send investigators. When the investigators issued a report condemning the seizure, Japan withdrew from the League. The U.S. refused to recognize the Japanese takeover of Manchuria, but was unwilling to threaten force. So over the next several years, Japan continued its expansion to establish control over the eastern part of Inner Mongolia and the areas north of China around Beijing. Japan was technically a constitutional monarchy with Emperor Hirohito, grandson of Emperor Meiji. Although Hirohito was aware of all the strategic decisions he had approved each military action, neither he nor the government leaders could control the army. In fact, it was the army that established Japanese foreign policy, and by the mid-1930s, militants connected to the government and the armed forces had gained control over Japanese politics. So here you have the League of Nations. Remember, it's a woman. League of Nations, you have face-saving outfit. We got to look good for the rest of the people around. Geneva, and you have Japan stepping on the League. Oh, the sleeping giant begins to feel it. Japan cutting off parts of China. A dinosaur. Japan leaves the league today. This is Emperor Meiji. This is young Emperor Hirohito. And this is one of those militant leaders, Hideki Tojo. Rape. Okay, so the next couple of pictures, I just want to let you know, are very graphic. And so, therefore, if you dislike what you're seeing, you can obviously skip through them. But I have to talk about it. It is necessary to talk about because not a lot gets talked about it when covering World War II. Chiang Kai-shek, remember, leader of China, nationalist, tried to avoid conflict with Japan so that he could deal with what he considered the greater threat, the Chinese communists. When clashes between the Chinese and Japanese troops broke out, he sought to appease Japan by allowing it to govern other areas in North China. As Japan moved steadily southward, protests against Japanese aggression grew stronger in Chinese cities. And this is probably why Mao Zedong was very popular following this. I mean, you're letting the Japanese just invade and take over, and you want to deal with the Chinese communists when it's Japan who's been invading your country? And he calls himself a nationalist. Come on. December 1936, Chiang Kai-shek ended his military efforts against the communists and formed the new United Front against the Japanese with the nationalist communists together. In July 1937, Chinese and Japanese forces clashed south of Beijing and hostilities was spread. Japan had not planned to declare war on China, but in 1937, this incident turned into a major conflict. The Japanese seized the Chinese capital of Nanking, same thing, in December. Japanese army, I spelled that wrong, Japanese, army destroyed the city and massacred more than 100,000 civilians and prisoners of war. Women, children, old, young men, didn't matter. This event was so brutal that it became known as the Rape of Nanjing. It is not nice to talk about when you talk about it or you try and look it up. I mean, there are graphic photos, and history it's not all just roses and rainbows. It's sometimes hard to talk about, but you have to learn about it to move on and not repeat. And I say that, and what's going on in Palestine, Israel right now is kind of the same thing. Chiang Kai-shek refused to surrender and move his government upriver, first to Hongguo and then to Chongqing. Temporarily defeated, the Chinese will continue to resist for the remainder of World War II. Here, the Japanese about to invade your land. And yeah, I'm not going to talk about these pictures. I'm just going to show them. And, it is what it is. These are brutal pictures, and the Japanese wanted to document it. So, yeah, it's tough. Like this picture, very tough. A baby it's not being burned, but this baby is crying out for his mom, got burn marks, destruction all around him. Live bayonet army practice. Again. Ugh. Asia for Asians. So Japanese military leaders had hoped to force Chiang to accept this new order in East Asia comprising Japan, Manchuria, and China. Japan would attempt to establish a new system of control in Asia, with Japan guiding its Asian neighbors to prosperity. Part of Japan's plan was to seize Soviet Siberia with its rich resources. During the 1930s, Japan began to cooperate with Nazi Germany. Japan assumed that the two countries would ultimately launch a joint attack on the Soviet Union and divide Soviet resources between them. When Germany signed the non-aggression pact with the Soviets in August 1939, Japanese leaders began to rethink their goals. Because Japan lacked the resources to defeat the Soviet Union, it looked to South Asia for raw materials for its military machine. There's that new order. There's the Asia. Ooh, sorry. It's a lot. You got to write a lot. You got to learn it. Pearl Harbor beginnings, especially from an American perspective. A move southward would risk war with European powers and the United States. Japan's attack on China had already aroused strong criticism, especially in the U.S. Still, in the summer of 1940, Japan demanded the right to exploit economic resources in French Indochina, modern-day Vietnam. The United States objected. It warned Japan that it would apply economic sanctions unless Japan withdrew from the area and returned it to its borders of 1931. Japan badly needed the oil and scrap iron it was getting from the United States, and should the resources be cut off, Japan would have to find elsewhere, and this would threaten Japan's long-term objectives. Expansionist policies. Come on, they got to expand. So now Japan's in a dilemma. What do we do? Do we react? Do we take a stand, or do we cower to United States threats? And, they were doing the same. They were just letting Hitler take what they wanted. And now Japan wanted to do the same in East Asia, Southeast Asia. To guarantee access to these raw materials in Southeast Asia, Japan had to risk losing them the support from the United States. After much debate, Japan decided to launch a surprise attack on the U.S. and the European colonies in Southeast Asia, all at the same time. And here you have the path of taking over all up in here. They didn't go too far inside China, but this red is the furthest Japanese control, 1942. We're in 1939 and the war hasn't even started. And this is what they all came about. Not this pink stuff or purple, but they got purple, they got green, all of that jazz. Lost 94% of oil. He needed it. And that is going to conclude. I can't stop. There we go. Stop sharing. Okay, yeah. Since I didn't finish. I'm just gonna close it. Anyways, so yeah, hope it was a long lecture. I'm sorry. It's long. It's starting World War II. Everyone get excited. Okay. Well, don't get excited about what I just showed because that was hard to show. So yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy that. Your homework is page 446, 2 through 4. Page 446, 2 through 4. If you guys did enjoy that, make sure make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next World War II video. Peace.